Human trends, rules, and systems are transient. They change with every generation, but what comes from God remains. The overflow, for example, is not optional. If you're not overflowing into others' lives, you are failing in God's purpose. Here's a hard truth. If you are silent, inactive, or living in scarcity, you are being a liability to the earth. Some of you live in a blessed country, but carry wrong mindsets that burden the place where you reside. If the entire earth adopted the American lifestyle, we would need 5 more planets to sustain the demand. What does this mean? It means that identity is not about imitating models of human prosperity or success, but about understanding what God uniquely called you to do. Now, about parents and inherited beliefs. It is important to maintain principles your parents taught, such as integrity, respect, and faith, but leave limiting rules and beliefs in their home. Honor them, but don't carry weights that aren't yours. Don't fight your parents. Respect them, but understand that moving forward requires discovering who you are, and that only happens through self-knowledge. Here's a quick review. You are stuck in a phase of your life because you haven't understood what needs to be abandoned or redefined. Many live with beliefs that paralyze them. For example, waking up early is a popular belief about success. Yes, it can be useful, but it is not a universal rule. I know priests who wake up at 3 a.m. every day but live in scarcity. It's not the time that defines the result. It's the action aligned with purpose. Studying at Harvard, for instance, can be transformative for some, but only if you know how to take advantage of the environment and connection. The example of Jorge Paulo Lemann, one of the richest men in Brazil, illustrates this. He was almost expelled from Harvard, but corrected his behavior, and today he is recognized for his ability to create powerful connections. However, merely attending Harvard guarantees nothing. The belief that the place alone transforms lives is limited. Now about prayer. Many of you speak to God but do not listen. True prayer is not just asking, it is listening. God already knows what you need before you ask, but you don't know what He wants to say. Stop just talking. Practice silence and listen. Imagine you're on a call with God. You start the conversation, but hang up before hearing the response. This is like using an old phone card and never waiting for the full connection. The true secret of prayer is to hear what God has to say. Here's a practical task. Genesis 1:26. Read this verse until it sinks into your soul. Accept that you are made in God's image and likeness. Then redefine your experience. If you grew up believing that wealth is selfishness, spend time with generous people who have resources. If you always saw conflict in family, seek examples of families aligned with God's purpose. Finally, self-knowledge requires action. You will need to leave your comfort zone. You will need to face conflict. Nothing is resolved without movement. Purpose is activated through growth in your identity. It's no use taking a vocational test or following imposed standards. Your identity is not in what you do, but in who you are. Now, reflect. Are you willing to leave your current place, face the necessary conflict, and grow in your identity? This is the only way to achieve true rest and overflow into others. Dichotomy, or binary thinking, is a conditioning that makes us believe we must always choose between right or wrong, left or right. This prevents us from creating new paths and keeps us paralyzed when making decisions. The true answer, in many situations, is to create something different. It's not about which direction to take, but about breaking stagnation and acting. Self-knowledge, or lech lecha, is a process of going inward to discover who you are in God and in the purpose He has for your life. This requires action. It's no use being stuck, thinking about all the possibilities without making decisions. Those who seek external answers for everything remain trapped in paralysis. Transformation happens when you stop waiting for the perfect choice and start acting with what you already know. Let me give you a practical example. Making mistakes is not the problem. The problem is the fear of making mistakes that keeps you from moving. Full identity doesn't come from the absence of mistakes, but from the ability to learn from them. If you don't make decisions and act, you will remain in the same place while God calls you to advance. And about questions, here's a code. Questions are never foolish, but those who don't ask questions may remain ignorant. Don't be afraid to ask, because questions reveal the level of maturity and desire to grow. However, the best questions are those that apply to your life. Asking for the sake of asking is not the goal. asked to understand, act, and transform. Returning to the central point, movement transforms more than thought. Don't stay stuck waiting for total clarity to begin. Make decisions, even small ones, and trust that God will adjust your steps along the way. He doesn't need you to have all the answers before starting. He needs you to trust and move. In conclusion, remember, your identity is not in your functions or others' expectations. You are the image and likeness of God, created to govern, produce, and overflow into others' lives. It's time to break free from paralysis and start living this fully. True love is when you feel loved by God. It's not just knowing that Jesus is present, but experiencing being completely loved by Him. Many people have Jesus in their lives, but don't experience this love fully because they haven't truly opened themselves to receive it. Loving others is a consequence, but the starting point is allowing yourself to be loved by Him. When you understand and accept this love, it casts out all fear. Fear is not overcome by human effort or positive thoughts, but by the security of knowing you are unconditionally loved. This is the central point, receiving God's love in such a way that it overflows and transforms. Now, about people who cut ties or reject you, don't worry. When you start to overflow, often the people around you aren't ready to receive or understand. This doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you're advancing in something others may not yet grasp. True friends don't leave, they remain. And here's an essential point about value and price. People have value, not price. Value lies in the essence of who you are and what you carry. When you live aligned with your purpose, the fruit of that manifests naturally as wealth. Wealth, in this sense, isn't just financial. It's the result of growth, wisdom, and overflow. It's fruit, not effort. Returning to the theme of layers, transitioning between them is a continuous and interconnected process. You can't skip stages without consequences. For example, the fifth layer can only be unlocked if the first is solidified. Everything begins with accepting who you are, the image and likeness of God. When you accept this, you can move forward, but the path must be consistent. The secret is understanding that each layer builds the foundation for the next. When you grasp this, there is no more paralysis because each step is clear.